The night was cold, and the marketplace was almost empty. Shadows stretched across broken stalls, and the air carried the smell of old food mixed with dust. Among the silence, a little alien girl walked slowly, her bare feet scraping the rough ground. She was thin, too thin, and her arms shook as she carried a bundle wrapped in torn cloth. Inside that bundle was her baby sister, weak and quiet, almost too quiet. The girl's big eyes searched every corner, but no one looked at her with kindness. Most people turned away, some laughed, and a few even shouted at her to leave. She stopped in front of a stall that once sold milk but was now nearly empty. A human stood there, his back bent as he packed away the last of his goods. His clothes were simple, his face tired, and his eyes sharp but calm. The girl swallowed hard and stepped closer, her voice breaking like glass. "Just milk for my sister, please. I'll pay you back when I'm grown," she whispered. Her voice was so soft that even the wind almost carried it away, but the human heard, and he froze. The words echoing in his mind, the girl's lips trembled as she spoke again, her tiny fingers gripping the bundle tighter. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days. Please, she will not live till morning." The human looked at her, and for a long moment, he'd said nothing. He had seen beggars before, both human and alien, but this felt different. The girl's eyes were not only hungry, they were full of a strange strength, a promise she could not yet keep, but one that felt real all the same. Behind them, a group of alien guards stood at the edge of the market. They watched the girl with cruel amusement. Whispering to each other, "She is back again, still begging," one muttered. "Worthless little creature," another laughed. "Why does she not just leave her sister to die, like the rest of her kind would?" The girl heard them, but lowered her head, too afraid to answer. The human clenched his jaw, anger flashing in his eyes, but still, he hesitated, for he knew helping her could bring trouble. He bent down slowly, his hands rough from years of work. "What is your name?" he asked quietly. The girl blinked, surprised that anyone would even ask. "My name is Lyra," she whispered, "and this is my sister, Mina." Her sister stirred weakly in the cloth, a tiny whimper escaping her lips. The sound was so fragile, it broke the silence like a cry of a bird. The human's heart tightened, though he tried not to show it. "You promise to pay me back when you are grown?" he asked, his tone careful. Lyra nodded quickly, her eyes shining with tears. She tried to hide. "Yes. I promise I will grow strong, and I will return it all," she said. Her words were desperate, yet they carried a weight that felt older than her years. The human looked away for a moment. Staring at the stars above the marketplace, he remembered his own childhood, his hunger, his helplessness. And for a moment, he saw himself in her, small and forgotten. One of the alien guards shouted across the square, "Hey, human! Leave her be. She is nothing but trouble." The man ignored them, his eyes fixed only on Lyra. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small flask. It was the last of his milk, something he had saved for his own meal. He held it out slowly, his voice steady. "Here, take this." Lyra's hands shook as she accepted the flask. Her fingers were cold, her arms trembling with the weight of both the milk and her sister. She pressed the flask to Mina's lips, and the baby drank weakly. Color began to return, just a little, to her pale cheeks. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She turned to the human and whispered, "Thank you. I will never forget this." The guards began to walk closer, suspicion in their eyes. The human stood up, placing himself between them and the girl. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone calm but edged with warning. The guards narrowed their eyes but stopped, muttering to each other. They knew better than to push too far tonight. Lyra clutched her sister close, her small body shivering with fear and relief. The human looked down at her once more. "Go now, before they change their minds," he said softly. Lyra nodded, stepping back into the shadows. But before she disappeared, she whispered again, "I will pay you back when I am grown." I promise. The human stood there long after she had gone, her words echoing in his heart like an oath written in fire. He did not know why, but something told him this was only the beginning, and that one day the little starving girl would return, not as a beggar, but as something far greater. The human stood for a long time after the little alien girl had left the marketplace. Her whisper echoed in his mind like a ghost. "Just milk for my sister, please. I'll pay you back when I'm grown." He had heard many voices before: soldiers shouting orders, merchants bargaining, children laughing, but never had a voice cut through him like hers. It carried hunger, pain, and a strange kind of strength. He rubbed his tired hands together, as if trying to push the thought away, but no matter how hard he tried, the image of the girl's trembling arms and her baby sister's fading whimper refused to leave him. His name was Marcus, once a soldier. Now just a simple trader. He had left the battlefield years ago, hoping to find peace. But peace was never easy to find in alien markets where cruelty was entertainment. He had seen beggars kicked aside, slaves sold for coins, and children ignored until they vanished in the cold. He had sworn to himself to stay out of trouble, to live quietly, but tonight his heart beat differently, louder, heavier. It asked him a question he could not easily answer. Was he willing to risk everything for two starving children who were not even his kind? He remembered the guards' laughter, the way they watched the girl as if her suffering was a game. If they discovered he had given her milk, they might punish him, fine him, or worse. The market had rules, and one of them was clear: humans should never interfere with alien affairs. And yet, hadn't he already broken that rule? The flask of milk was gone from his bag. Now in the little girl's hands, he had made a choice, even if it was small, and choices always carried weight. Marcus walked slowly back to his small house at the edge of the market. The wooden door creaked. As he pushed it open, inside, the single lamp flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the walls. He set down his pack, but did not sit, instead pacing across the floor. His mind was restless, his body uneasy. He poured himself a cup of water but left it untouched every time he closed his eyes. He saw Lyra's face, her hollow cheeks, her wide eyes filled with both fear and determination, and every time he felt the same tightness in his chest. "Fool," he muttered under his breath. "You should have walked away." But even as he said the words, he knew they were lies. He had never been the kind of man to walk away from a cry for help. Not in war, not in peace. He thought of the oath he once swore as a soldier to protect the weak, to stand where others fled. That oath had been buried with the dead of his unit. But perhaps, in some quiet way, it was still alive inside him. Outside, the wind howled, carrying faint voices from the marketplace. The guards were still awake, still talking, and he caught pieces of their cruel laughter drifting through the night. Did you see her beg again? Pathetic, she never lasts the winter, neither of them will. Marcus clenched his fists, anger burning in his veins. But anger alone could not feed to children, nor could it protect them. He needed to decide, and decide quickly as he paced. His thoughts drifted back to his own childhood. He had known hunger once, long ago, before the army took him in. He remembered the ache in his belly, the sharp pain of emptiness that never went away. He remembered stealing bread from carts, running barefoot through alleys, hiding from men who would have beaten him. And he remembered one moment, just one, when a stranger had given him food without asking for anything in return. That act had kept him alive long enough to grow, long enough to fight, long enough to choose his own path. And now, he stood where that stranger once stood. The circle of fate had come around, and he could not ignore it. Marcus sighed heavily and sat down, burying his face in his hands. If he helped the girls, he would be marked. The aliens already distrusted him. Some hated him, and others tolerated him only because he brought useful goods, if they believed he was hiding the starving girl and her sister. His trade license could be stripped away, or worse, they could drag him through the streets as an example. But if he did nothing, Mina, the baby, would not survive, and Lyra, no matter how strong she pretended to be, would break. The dilemma tore at him, pulling him in two directions. One voice whispered to stay quiet. Stay safe, stay invisible. The other voice shouted to act, to save them, to do what was right, even if it cost him. He rose from his chair again, walking to the window. The moonlight spilled over the dirt road, silver and cold. He thought he saw a shadow move at the far end, small and quick. For a heartbeat, he wondered if it was Lyra herself, standing there in the dark, watching, waiting. But when he blinked, the road was empty. Still, his decision was already shaping inside him. He could not pretend anymore. He could not erase the memory of her voice. He whispered into the silence, "If I don't help her, who will?" And though no one answered, he felt as if the stars themselves were listening. The night stretched on, heavy with uncertainty. Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts were filled with questions: how to find the girls, how to keep them hidden, how to keep them alive. Every sound outside made him tense. Every shadow felt like danger. But beneath the fear, there was something else too. A spark of purpose, something he had not felt in years. Perhaps this was not only their fight to survive, but his chance to live again, not as a broken soldier or a tired traitor, but as a man who chose to stand as dawn began to paint the sky with pale light. Marcus finally sat up. His eyes were tired, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. The human's dilemma was no longer a question. It was a path, and he had already taken the first step. The morning light had barely touched the market. When Marcus stepped outside, his boots pressed into the dust and his eyes scanned every corner as if searching for a ghost. He did not have to search for long, for he saw Hurler curled up in the shadow of a broken cart. Her little sister Mina wrapped tightly against her chest. Her lips were pale, her eyes half closed. Yet when she saw Marcus's approach, she tried to stand quickly, as if afraid of being chased away. Marcus lifted his hand slowly, showing no threat. "You followed me," he said quietly, his voice calm. Lyra lowered her head. "I didn't mean to. I just didn't know where else to go." Her words were heavy with shame, but her eyes carried a desperate hope. Mina whimpered in her arms, the sound soft but full of weakness. Marcus looked at them both and sighed. "You'll freeze out here," he said. "Come with me." Lyra froze, her small feet rooted to the ground. Her kind had always warned her about humans: dangerous, selfish, cruel. She stared at Marcus with suspicion, unsure if his kindness was real or a trap. But then Mina whimpered again, her fragile body shaking, and Lyra knew she had no choice. Slowly, hesitantly, she followed him. Her steps light and quick, as though she might run at any second. Marcus led them through narrow alleys until they reached his small home. The wooden walls creaked in the wind, and the roof was patched with old metal sheets. It was no palace, no fortress, but compared to the cold market floor, it was a haven. He pushed the door open and stepped aside. "Go in," he said simply. Lyra stepped inside, her eyes darting around the room. A single table, a chair, a bed in the corner, and shelves lined with jars of dried food. To her, it looked like treasure, more than she had ever known. She clutched Mina tightly and whispered, "Stay strong, little one. We are safe for now." Marcus closed the door behind them, the wooden latch falling into place for the first time. The girl was in a place where the guards could not see her. "Sit," Marcus said. Pointing to the chair, Lyra obeyed, her eyes still watchful, her body tense. Marcus poured water into a cup and placed it in front of her. Her hands trembled as she lifted it, drinking slowly, careful not to spill a drop. Then he warmed some bread on the small stove and placed it before her. Lyra stared at it, her eyes wide. "Eat." Marcus said firmly, "You need strength." At first, she shook her head, pushing the bread toward Mina. But Mina was too young to chew, only able to sip milk from the flask. Marcus frowned. "If you don't eat, you won't have the strength to care for her." Lyra hesitated, then took a small bite. Her eyes closing as the taste filled her mouth. It was the first real food she had eaten in days. And her body trembled as if it could not believe it. Marcus watched in silence, his heart heavy. He saw not just a starving child, but a survivor. Someone who carried more courage than many grown men. Her eyes, though tired, carried fire. A fire that had not yet gone out. He leaned back in his chair and asked softly, "Where are your parents?" The question made her freeze, her hand tightening around Mina. "They're gone," she whispered, her voice breaking, taken by traitors. "I never saw them again." Marcus's jaw tightened, his chest burning with anger. He had seen the traitors before, ruthless men who preyed on the weak. It explained everything: the hunger, the fear, the loneliness in her eyes. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but no words came. Instead, he simply said, "You don't have to be alone anymore." Lyra looked at him sharply. "Suspicious? Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Marcus leaned forward, his hands resting on the table. "Because once, a long time ago, someone helped me when I was starving," he said. "And because your sister deserves a chance to live." Lyra stared at him, her lips parting, but no words came for the first time in her life. Someone saw her not as worthless, but as someone worth saving. The silence stretched between them, filled only by Mina's soft breathing. Then came a knock at the door, loud and sharp. Marcus's head turned, his eyes narrowing. "Stay quiet," he whispered, motioning for Lyra to hide. She hurried behind the bed, clutching Mina tightly, her breath coming fast. Marcus opened the door slightly, and there stood two alien guards, their eyes cold. "We're searching for a thief," one said harshly. "A little girl, worthless, starving, probably dead already." Marcus kept his face calm, his tone steady. "Haven't seen anyone like that," he replied. The guards peered inside, suspicion glinting in their eyes, but after a tense moment, they turned away. Muttering to each other, Marcus closed the door firmly, bolting it shut. Lyra crawled out from behind the bed, her face pale. Her heart was still racing, but her eyes locked on Marcus with something new: trust. You protected us," she whispered. Marcus nodded, though his jaw was tight. "It won't be easy," he said. "If they find out, they'll come for both of us." Lyra hugged Mina close, her little voice trembling. "Then we'll hide." "I'll do anything. Just don't make us leave." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then finally nodded. "You can stay," he said, "but you must listen to everything I say." Lyra nodded quickly, her eyes shining with relief. In that moment, in the shadows of a broken house, a fragile bond was sealed. It was a bond of survival, of trust, and of something more powerful than both: hope. The night came quickly, wrapping Marcus's small house in silence. The wind rattled against the wooden walls, but inside, the fire from a small stove gave a soft warmth. Lyra sat near the flames, her baby sister Mina asleep in her lap. Her small hands brushed Mina's thin hair, her eyes half closed with exhaustion. Marcus watched from across the table, his arms crossed, his face thoughtful. He had given them food, a blanket, and shelter, but he knew this was only the beginning. "Tell me," Marcus said softly, his voice breaking the quiet. "How long have you been alone?" Lyra looked up quickly, her eyes wide as if she had been caught in a secret. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. I don't know, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. The days all feel the same now. Marcus leaned forward, his gaze steady. What happened to your parents? The question hung in the air like heavy smoke. Lyra's fingers tightened around Mina, her body stiff, as though the memory was a wound that never healed. They came one night, she whispered, her voice low. The traitors, her eyes glistened. But she fought the tears back. They broke into our home, dragged my parents out, and threw me aside like I was nothing. Her words shook, her voice breaking with each syllable. I screamed for them. I chased after them, but they hit me. And I never saw my parents again. Marcus's jaw clenched, his chest burning with anger. He had seen those same traitors in other towns, ruthless men with no mercy. The kind who sold children into slavery. The kind who laughed at the pain of the weak. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to stay calm. And since then? How have you survived? Lyra lowered her gaze, her thin arms wrapping tighter around Mina. I begged, she admitted, her voice full of shame. Sometimes people threw scraps, sometimes they threw stones. Her lips trembled, but she pressed on. I learned to hide in the alleys, to sleep under broken carts, to take whatever no one else wanted. Her voice dropped even lower, but it was never enough. Mina is too small. She needs milk, and I couldn't give it to her for the first time. Her tears spilled freely, falling onto Mina's blanket. I thought I would lose her, she whispered. I thought she would die in my arms, Marcus. Said nothing for a long moment, the firelight flickering across his tired face. He had seen war, seen men fall, heard the cries of children in burning villages. But nothing pierced him like the sight of this tiny girl. Trying to be strong while the world crushed her. You're stronger than you think. He said at last, his voice low but firm. Lyra blinked, surprised by his words. You carried her. You kept her alive. Even when no one cared, he continued. That is not weakness, Lyra. That is strength. Her lips parted, her breath catching. No one had ever told her she was strong. Not once. For her whole life, she had been called worthless, a burden, something less than the rest. But now, here was a human stranger telling her that her fight to survive meant something, for a moment. The firelight reflected in her eyes, and she looked less like a starving child and more like someone carrying a hidden flame. But before comfort could settle in, the sound of heavy boots echoed outside. Marcus's head snapped toward the door. His body tense, he signaled to Lyra to stay quiet, placing a finger to his lips. The baby stirred at the sudden tension, but Lyra quickly rocked her. Whispering softly until Mina fell silent again, Marcus moved to the window and peeked through the crack. 2 guards were passing by, their torches glowing, their voices sharp. They say the girl was seen near this street, one muttered. If the human has her, he'll regret it. The other laughed cruelly. Let them starve. It's what they deserve. Marcus's hands curled into fists, but he pulled back from the window. His jaw set. The danger was closer now. Closer than he had hoped. He turned to Lyra, who was watching him with wide, frightened eyes. They're looking for you, he said quietly. Her small body shook, her arms tightening around Mina. They won't stop until they find us, she whispered, her voice full of fear. Marcus crouched down in front of her, his voice steady. Then they won't find you, he said. Not while you're under my roof. Her breath caught, her eyes shining with disbelief. Why would you risk yourself for me? She asked, her voice trembling. Marcus looked at her, his eyes heavy with memory. Because once, someone risked everything for me, he answered, and if they hadn't, I wouldn't be here. His words carried weight, but he offered no more detail. Not yet. Lyra nodded slowly, her trust in him growing. Though fear still lingered in her heart, the fire burned lower as the night grew deeper. Lyra finally laid Mina down on the blanket, the baby breathing softly. For the first time in days, she let herself rest. Her eyes closing as sleep pulled her into its arms, Marcus sat at the table, his gaze on the two sisters. His thoughts heavy. He had taken them in, but what came next would not be easy. The guards would search, the traitors might return. And whispers of betrayal always traveled fast in markets like these. But for now, in this small house, wrapped in shadows, he had made a silent vow. He would protect them, no matter the cost. And though he did not yet know it, the hidden past they shared the pain of hunger. The scars of loss was already binding them together in ways stronger than blood. Asterisk, the days that followed were tense, every moment filled with the weight of fear. Marcus kept his small home quiet, careful to draw no attention. Lyra stayed mostly in the shadows of the room, holding Mina close, listening for every sound outside. Her heart jumped at every footstep, every knock, every raised voice from the street. The guards were still searching, their voices carried through the night, spreading rumors and threats. They wanted the starving alien girl, not because she was dangerous, but because her suffering amused them. To them, she was nothing more than a wandering stray to punish, but to Marcus, she was no longer just a stranger. She was a responsibility, and perhaps something more, a reminder of his own humanity. One evening, Marcus returned from the market with a bag of food. His steps were heavy, his eyes sharp, and his jaw set with frustration. He placed the bag on the table and spoke in a low voice. "They're asking questions now, not just about you, but about me." Lyra looked up quickly, her small hands trembling. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Marcus rubbed his forehead, sighing. "Some traders said they saw me give milk away, and the guards are suspicious if they believe I'm hiding you. They'll come here." The fear in the room deepened. Lyra's arms tightened around Mina as if someone was already trying to take her away. Her voice broke as she said, "I don't want you to get hurt because of us." Marcus shook his head, his tone firm. "You don't understand. I've already made my choice. Sending you away now would not erase it. They'll keep hunting you, and they'll never stop. But if you stay, at least I can fight for you." Lyra stared at him, her lips trembling, her eyes filling with tears she tried not to shed. For the first time, someone had chosen her over safety. Someone had decided she was worth the risk. She whispered, "Why?" Not expecting an answer, Marcus's eyes softened, though his voice was steady, because no child should suffer for the amusement of others, and no man should stand by and do nothing. That night, the risk grew sharper. Marcus heard boots outside. Stopping near his house, he motioned quickly for Lyra to hide, and she slipped into the dark space beneath the bed, holding Mina tight against her chest. Her heart pounded so loud she feared the guards might hear it. The knock came, harsh and loud, against the wooden door. Marcus opened it slowly, his expression calm, though his muscles tensed. Two guards stood there, torches in hand, their eyes narrow and suspicious. "We've had reports," one guard said, his voice like gravel, "that a child was seen near your stall. A worthless little thing begging for food, and you gave it to her." Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "I gave food to many," he said simply. "Hungry mouths are common." Here, the second guard leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Not like her," he hissed. "Thin, with big eyes, carrying a bundle. You'd know her if you saw her." Marcus kept his voice steady. "I've seen beggars, yes, but not the one you describe. I sell goods, not secrets." The guards stepped closer, their torches casting long shadows into the room. One of them tried to push past Marcus, but he blocked the way, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. "You suspect me of hiding a child?" Marcus asked coldly. Search if you must. But know this, for you accuse a human without proof. The traitors will whisper, and soon no one will trust your word." The guards hesitated, glancing at each other. They knew Marcus had built respect among certain merchants, and accusing him without evidence could backfire. After a long pause, they spat on the ground and turned away. Muttering threats as they left, the sound of their boots faded. But the fear they left behind clung to the air like smoke. Lyra crawled out from beneath the bed, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. Her voice shook as she whispered, "They almost found us." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "They'll be back, and next time, they'll bring more men. We need to be ready." That night, Marcus moved shelves and lifted floorboards, revealing a small hidden space he had once used to keep stolen supplies during his soldier days. It was narrow and dark, but large enough for Lyra and Mina to hide. If the guards forced their way in, he showed it to her, his voice low. "If they come again, you go here and stay silent, no matter what you hear. Do you understand?" Lyra nodded quickly, though fear shone in her eyes. Her voice broke as she whispered, "What if they hurt you?" Marcus gave a faint smile, though his eyes were tired. "Then I'll make sure they don't reach you." The bond between them grew stronger with every risk, every danger shared. Lyra began to see Marcus not as a stranger, but as something closer to family. When Mina coughed in the night, Marcus brought herbs. When Lyra shivered, he gave her his own blanket, and each time, Lyra whispered softly, almost to herself, "I'll pay you back when I'm grown." The days grew darker as the guards' search continued. The whispers in the market grew louder. Everyone wanted to know if the human was hiding the alien child. Some sneered, some smirked, and some warned him quietly to be careful. But Marcus ignored them, keeping his focus only on the two lives depending on him. The risk of discovery pressed closer with every passing hour. Yet, in his heart, Marcus knew something deeper. This was no longer only about survival. It was about defying cruelty itself. And though danger circled them like wolves, the small fire of hope inside that house refused to die. The market grew louder in the days that followed. But the whispers about Marcus grew louder too. Some traders avoided his stall, while others glanced at him with suspicion. The guards lingered longer whenever he passed, their eyes sharp, their smiles cruel. Lyra felt the change, and every time Marcus returned home, she asked the same trembling question, "Did they say anything about us?" Marcus never answered directly, only saying, "We still have time." But his jaw grew tighter each day. One evening, the sound of boots came again. Heavier this time, Marcus stiffened as the door rattled under the force of fists. "Open up." "Human," a voice barked. "The captain wants words with you." Marcus motioned for Lyra to hide in the floor space he had shown her before. Her eyes filled with fear, but she obeyed quickly, clutching Mina close as she slipped into the dark hole. Marcus closed the boards, pulled a rug over them, and went to open the door. 5 guards entered, their armor glinting under torchlight. Behind them came the captain, taller, broader, his expression full of pride and cruelty. He looked around the house, his gaze lingering on the shelves. The stove, the bed, a neat little place. The captain sneered. "But I hear it is hiding more than wood and stone." Marcus crossed his arms, meeting the captain's eyes. "You've heard wrong," he said evenly. "There is nothing here worth your time." The captain stepped closer, his boots echoing against the wooden floor. "You gave food to the beggar girl. We know this," he said. "You've already broken the law." Marcus didn't flinch, his voice steady. "If feeding a child is against your law, then it's a law written by cowards." The guards muttered angrily. One even raised his spear, but the captain held up his hand. "No need for violence yet," the captain said, his eyes narrowing. "We prefer bargains, Marcus." frowned, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "What bargain?" he asked. The captain leaned closer, his voice low and mocking. "Give us the girl, and you may walk free. No fines, no punishment, no chains." His smile widened. "Cruel and sharp, but if you refuse, you'll lose everything, your trade. License, your home, maybe even your life." The words hung in the air like poison. Marcus's mind raced. The choice heavy as iron. He could save himself by giving up Lyra. He could end the suspicion and live quietly again. But when he thought of her wide eyes, her trembling voice, her desperate plea for her sister's milk, he knew he could never betray her. He shook his head, his voice firm. "No," he said. "You'll get nothing from me." The captain's smile faded, his face hardening. "Careful, human," he hissed. "Your defiance will cost you dearly." Marcus took a deep breath, then reached into a small wooden box on the shelf. He pulled out a medal, old and worn, its metal dulled by years of touch. It was the last thing he had from the war, the last memory of his unit, the only piece of honor he carried. He held it out to the captain, his hand steady. "Take this," he said. "It is worth more than gold, a medal given for saving lives. It's all I have left." The captain stared at it, his expression shifting. He reached forward slowly. Taking the medal in his thick fingers, he turned it in the light, the engraved mark of bravery shining faintly. For a moment, silence stretched. And then the captain laughed. A deep, cruel sound. "You value this, don't you?" he said mockingly. "You think this trinket will buy their safety?" Marcus's eyes burned, but he didn't look away. "Yes," he said, "because it means something, something you'll never understand. A promise kept, a life saved. Take it and leave the girl alone." The captain studied him for a long moment, then finally closed his fist around the medal. "Very well," he said with a smirk. "We'll take your little gift. For now, the girl remains free." He motioned to his men, and they filed out, their torches casting long shadows across the walls. At the doorway, the captain turned back, his eyes glinting. "But remember this, human. Bargains don't last forever." Then he was gone. The sound of boots fading into the night. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, the silence pressing heavily on his chest. Then slowly, he moved the rug aside and lifted the boards. Lyra crawled out, clutching Mina tightly, her face pale, her body trembling. She looked at Marcus, her lips quivering. "You gave them something," she whispered. "You gave them something precious." "For me?" Marcus sighed, sitting down heavily on the chair. "It was only metal," he said, though his eyes told a different story. "You and Mina are worth more than that." Lyra stared at him, tears filling her eyes. "No one has ever chosen me before," she whispered, her voice shaking. Her words cut deeper than any blade, and Marcus felt the weight of what he had done. He had made a bargain, yes, but it wasn't with the captain. It was with himself, a promise that no matter what, he would protect these children, even if it meant losing the last piece of his old life. The fire burned low, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the guards laughed as they walked away, unaware of the bond they had only strengthened. Inside, Lyra sat close to Marcus, her head lowered, but her trust growing. The dangerous bargain had been made. But Marcus knew this was far from over. The guards would return, the traitors would not forget, and the world outside still hungered for cruelty. But now, he was no longer just a man living quietly in the shadows. He was a shield, a protector, bound by a promise stronger than any metal. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Life in Marcus's small house was never easy, but it was no longer empty. Lyra worked hard to help, sweeping the floor, fetching water, and caring for Mina whenever Marcus was away. Her eyes still carried the memory of hunger, but slowly, a new light began to shine their hope. She smiled sometimes, a rare, fragile smile, and each time Marcus saw it. He knew his choice had been right, but the danger never truly vanished. The guards still patrolled the streets. Their eyes sharp, their words cruel. Every time Marcus passed them, he felt their stares. A reminder that their so-called bargain could shatter at any moment. Yet he refused to live in fear. He trained Lyra quietly, teaching her how to move without making a sound, how to stay hidden, how to think quickly. She listened carefully, soaking up every word, her determination stronger than her small frame suggested. One night, as the fire crackled low, Lyra sat beside Marcus, Mina asleep in her arms. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "You gave them your medal, didn't you?" The one that mattered most. Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze on the flames. "It was all I had left from the war, but medals are only metal. They don't keep anyone alive." Lyra tilted her head, her eyes searching his face. "Why did you do it for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Marcus looked at her, his voice deep and certain. "Because you reminded me of myself, long ago, hungry and forgotten, and because no child should suffer alone." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only from pain. "I will remember," she whispered. "I will pay you back when I'm grown, I swear it." Marcus smiled faintly, shaking his head. "You don't owe me anything," he said gently. "Just live, that's enough." But in her heart, Lyra carried that promise like a stone carved with fire. Years passed, and the little starving girl grew. Lyra became stronger, her thin frame filling with strength. Her eyes sharper, her spirit unbroken. She worked, she fought. She learned every skill Marcus taught her, and Mina grew too. No longer a fragile baby, but a bright child full of laughter. The small house that once echoed with silence now rang with the sounds of life. For Marcus, it was more than he had ever asked for. It was a family, though not of blood, bound by choice and sacrifice. But fate was not done with them. One day a caravan arrived at the marketplace, carrying banners of a powerful alien house. Whispers filled the air, rumors of lost heirs, stolen children, and traitors who had taken more than they should. Among the caravan was a woman with eyes like lyres, her face worn with grief, but her voice sharp with command. When she saw Lyra walking beside Marcus, she froze, her breath catching Lyra. The woman whispered, her voice trembling. Lyra turned, her body stiff, her eyes wide. "Mama?" she whispered, the word breaking from her lips like glass. The truth came crashing down. Lyra and Mina had been the lost daughters of a respected family, stolen by traitors in the night, thought to be dead. The woman embraced them, tears streaming down her face. The guards who once hunted them now bowed in shame. Marcus stood back, silent, watching the reunion, his heart heavy but proud. He had saved them long enough for fate to bring them home. But before she left, Lyra turned to him, her eyes shining, her voice steady. "Do you remember my promise?" she asked softly. Marcus blinked, unsure what she meant. "The milk," she whispered. "The night I begged you, I said I would pay you back when I was grown." She stepped forward, placing a pouch of silver in his hand. "More than enough to live comfortably." But Marcus shook his head, closing her hand around it instead. "You've already paid me back," he said, "with life, with laughter, with hope." Yet Lyra was stubborn, the same fire still burning inside her. "No," she said firmly, her voice trembling but strong. "I will not forget, not ever. You saved us when no one else would. And one day, when you need me, I will come back." Her words were not a child's promise anymore, but the vow of someone grown, someone powerful. Marcus looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt tears in his eyes. He nodded, his voice rough. "Then I will hold you to it." The caravan left, taking Lyra and Mina back to their people. The house felt quiet again, but Marcus did not feel alone. He knew the bond between them was not broken by distance. It was written in the fire of survival. In the milk shared on a desperate night, in the metal given to save their lives, and though years might pass, he knew one day a knock would come at his door. And standing there would be Lyra, not a starving girl, but a strong woman, ready to repay her promise, a promise for the future, one born in hunger, sealed in trust, and carried forever in their hearts.